What's going on, everybody, and welcome to the Diehard MMA Podcast. It is Monday. I'm your boy Clint, and I got a little something here for you. Anybody? No? Nobody? Huh? As you all know, it is the Diehard MMA Podcast. And my favorite Christmas movie of all time, we got to pay some tribute to our man John McClane. Let me go ahead and get the appropriate t-shirt on here. That's right. It is the Die Hard Stimulus Check t-shirt today, baby. How is everybody doing? We are cashing these bad boys left and right, heating up at just the right time at the end of the year. And I could not be more pumped up if you cashed with me on that Hail Mary parlay, on Hill, on all of our big boys that we had over the weekend. Make sure you head to pubsportsradio.com where they host the Die Hard merch. We got it all hanging out over there for you. How's everybody doing? Marcus Henry in the chat, Angel Garcia, Tony C, Andrew Mills. I respect you, my friend. Thank you very much. Man like B, Ariana Comaraga. I'm sure I messed that name up. Fourth level consciousness. Thank you. I feel like a beast right now. We're killing it. How is everybody this evening? All right. We got all those people rolling in. I see all my familiar faces and names now. Brian Lockett, Marlon Z. How's everybody doing this evening? All right. Is there an echo for somebody? I saw a bit Kiran saying there's an echo. Anybody else? Somebody in the chat confirm for me whether or not there's an echo, because there shouldn't be. Okay, so what we have going on today, we have our special guest, Matt Holt. He should be joining us here in a little bit. Unfortunately, there was a little bit of an issue with the timing. There's the time zone difference. Everybody's getting messed up by daylight savings time and all that crap. So sorry about that. Okay, so I have one person saying huge echo. Everybody else says no echo. We're good. So I'm gonna assume we're good. And I'm sorry if you have an echo, because everybody else seems to be doing just fine. Just fine. All right, we got 91 people hanging out with us this evening. Let's go ahead and do our usual recap of last week's event. And baby, do we have a lot of good stuff to talk about. I could not have called this fight card more perfectly. I mean, we hit the Hail Mary parlay, we hit damn near every one of our bets, and we could have swept the card on crazy shit. I mean, the Hail Mary parlay kicked us off with Jake Collier. That's right, the tubby dude that's coming up at heavyweight for God knows what reason. We called him by decision at plus 550. I can't believe I didn't actually put a bet on Collier by decision. That was a read that I had at the post weigh-in show, which is on fire, folks. The post weigh-in recap show for odds.com is absolutely on fuego at the moment. And Jake Collier by decision at plus 550 was huge. Would have been awesome if we had gotten in on it. Ilya Topuria getting our Georgian Warrior parlay started the right way, absolutely dominated that fight, crushed his opponents, and then we moved right along with Luis Smolka getting it done inside the distance. I was tempted to take him inside the distance, but just played him straight, played him the safe way, and missed out on 2-1 there. So a little bit disappointed. It's weird, right? Coming off a night where we crushed it, I'm plus 6.5 units on the evening. I'm missing out on value, and I'm talking about the spots that I could have gotten, 5-1 and 2.5-1. Shit, all right, I got to be happy with what we got. We got to be grateful for what we have. It is the time of year. We got to be very, very grateful for having this sport available to us and having the means to be able to bet on this stuff for our own good on entertainment. Roman Dolidze, holy crap, man. When he looked over at his corner and he goes, "Coach, you want me to submit him?" I was like, shit, here we go. I was like, we're going to cash the inside the distance. We're going to cash the sub prop. And then he goofed off and he didn't get it. At least he cashed the Georgian Warrior parlay for us, but he made it far closer than it ever should have been. And that damn judge, who could have possibly scored that fight for John Alon? That dude needs to lose his job. I'm sick of the Nevada State Athletic commission. I'm fed up to freaking here with those people. Gabriel Benitez, Justin James didn't get it done for us. He did not manage to get that finish for us, unfortunately. That's upsetting. I was hoping to get the big dog, but you know what? The bigger of the two plays was on that under 2.5 violence bet, so we cashed that one nice and easily. Jamal Hill, biggest bet of 2020 for me, for the podcast, comes in spades. He had control of that fight from start to finish. I was nervous out of my mind because OSP has gotten me in a couple of these situations before trying to go against him. So Hill, my boy, showing up doing the damn thing. If you're listening, I'm sure he's not, but if you are, thank you very much, my friend. If I'm ever in your neck of the woods, I owe you a steak dinner. Jack Hermanson, Marvin Vettori. Vettori by decision. That's another one that I talked about. Again, the price was right, so there was no need to try and chase crazy value on it. So we got Marvin Vettori, and we got him at a nice price. This kid is legit. Never questioned this guy's heart or his quality or his cardio. Never question him ever again. This kid is headed for the top of the division. I love this kid, and I cannot wait to see him face off against some of the top 5 in there. And that did it. That did our whole damn night. Like I said, I hedged off 1 unit on Jack Hermanson because we had the Hail Mary parlay live for a big score there at the end. Wanted to kind of make sure I had some good money in my pocket. Plus 6.5, 6.57 units on the night. Back-to-back crushing weeks. This is the right way to end 2020. So let's keep that good vibe rolling and end the year strong. Yeah, thank you, Wally Dallas. Chris Lee, that's the guy. Make sure that name gets out there. Chris Lee, that is the garbage judge that the Nevada State Athletic Commission has let ruin our sport for the moment. So yeah, let's make sure that name is known. Damn, Mike Like B had the round 2 sub. Yikes, that was close, man. You know what? I actually thought, hey, there we go, 4th level consciousness getting in on it. I thought the second round was actually going to be the round that Smolka got it done. So I'm a little bummed I didn't sprinkle rounds 2 and 3. But again, I'm just kind of shooting myself in the foot here. We cashed a straight bet on him. That should be good enough for me, and I need to stop bitching about missing these opportunities. So just crushing it, feeling good, feeling excited. The only thing that's got me down right now is Antonio Gibson getting knocked out of the the damn game on the very first play. My fantasy football future is in jeopardy without that man, so I hope he comes back for the second half, and I have the touchdown prop on him, of course. So need him back. Need you back, Antonio. Come on, buddy. All right, so let's see here. We're probably going to have to buy a little bit more time. Matt Holt may be in just a little bit later. I don't know that he's going to make it for another 15 minutes or so, something like that. But we will pop him in as soon as he arrives. I hope you all are doing very, very well this evening and about in as good a mood as I am, because it couldn't get much better at the moment. So what we're looking at is UFC 256 coming up on Saturday, and it's been absolutely crushed by COVID. This card is so sick. It's stacked from top to bottom, and it's just falling apart. It's falling apart at the seams right now. Let me go ahead and get my usual cage background going here. And a big shout out also to odds.com. Everything they do for us, all the content they let us put out. If it wasn't for you guys tuning in, we wouldn't be able to do this. But Odds is absolutely the best partner I ever could have asked for. So make sure, if you guys haven't subscribed over on Odds YouTube channel, please go ahead and do that. And as always, when we're done with this whole thing, if you missed it live, the replay will be live exclusively on odds.com. Rather than hunting YouTube down for my shows, if you guys are looking for the post-weigh-in show, if you're looking for the total madness, go to odds.com, hit the UFC tab. Super easy to navigate. You'll find it there every single time. All right. Justa, what fights? So the very first fight of the night actually is one that we lost to COVID. We had Jing Liang Li and Dwight Grant, a fight that I was very excited about. That one went down. Grant just popped for COVID. I want to say they announced it 15 minutes ago. I mean, it just broke the news that it's getting taken out there. So what we have instead is, let me roll through here because we're going to have to jump on the fly. Tisha Torres, Angela Hill. That's another one that popped for COVID. That one is out. And then we lost. You know what? Those are two. Oh, you know what? We have Dalcha Lungiambula. That fight, his opponent popped for COVID. Supposedly they're moving it to next week. And then we had Jillian Robertson and Angela Lee. They were supposed to fight on this card as well. KGB Lee was injured. So it's not COVID, but Jillian will be fighting next week, taking on, I believe, Talia Santos, because her opponent popped for COVID and that fight got postponed. So those two both lost their dance partners, and now they're going to be coming back the other direction and giving us a fight. So those are the ones. We got a whole lot to get around there on that. Nevro making it live, buddy. What's going on? Thank you for hanging out. Yes, the Carl Robertson fight, unfortunately. Geez, you know what? If you follow me on Twitter at Diehard MMA Pod, you know, your boy had a bet on Dalcha Lungiambula. So there's a chance, there's an outside shot that one's going to get scrapped because they ended up moving that one another week. So we'll see if that one, I might have to re-up on that bet. It might get voided, but I'm planning on being on Dalcha Lungiambula on that one. We'll break it down next week when the fight actually happens, but that's the line I'm looking for there. Roberto, what's up, buddy? Elijah, how you doing, my friend? Everybody in the house. Let's get started on these breakdowns. So I've got to mix and move my notes around here to accommodate for the missing fights. The very first two that I had lined up were Dwight Grant and Jing Liang, Dalcha, and Carl. So the first two fights we were going to talk about, we're no longer talking about. It looks like based on the UFC's show here, you know what, until I get my guest in here. So based on what we've got here, we've got Chase Hooper taking on Peter Garrett, it looks like, for the first fight of the night. Now, Chase Hooper, we all remember this kid, right? 9-1. He was undefeated until he got into a scrap with Alex Bruce Leroy Caceres. And we've got his opponent, Peter Barrett, who's a relative UFC newcomer, had a bit of a tough outing in his first fight. I'm sorry, my notes are all messed up because of this last minute shift here. So Hooper is a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu brown belt. That's this kid's path to victory. All he does is grapple and choke people out. He's awesome. I expected him to come in and do that. We beat the massive flood of money that came in on him when he fought Bruce Leroy. And unfortunately, he decided he fancied himself a striker that night rather than being a grappler, and he got boxed up by Caceres, and he showed off a hell of a chin in that fight. So his striking, absolute work in progress. His wrestling, work in progress, but his jiu-jitsu is next level. Super green, this kid. We'll find out whether or not he really belongs in the UFC. Peter Barrett is 11-4, and I like what I see from this kid so far. He's got a stiff jab. He likes to bully his opponents up against the fence. Really good, strong hips and solid takedown defense. The only problem is he's really god-awful off of his back. So this is a spot where it is a striker versus grappler, but really, both of these guys are so awful in the other's discipline that I don't, it's a dog or pass situation. All it comes down to is that it's a dog or pass situation. However, I don't know that it's something that I can actually take the shot on the dog for. I would love to try and fade Chase Hooper because this line is absolutely inflated. He's sitting around minus 400 right now, but I just don't know if I can do it. Let me get this up here. Here we go. Here's my odds page. This is bestfightodds.com for anybody wondering. Everybody always asks that one. I love this page for tracking the line movements and things like that. So yeah, Chase Hooper sitting here right around a minus 400 favorite. We get plus 300 coming back the other way. And as much as I want to fade Chase Hooper, Peter Barrett's absence of a ground game, I think, is a problem. We're going to talk about this one on Total Madness. There's an outside shot that maybe we use this fight for an under instead, because if Chase Hooper gets this fight to the floor, I think Peter Barrett's in trouble. And if Peter Barrett keeps this fight standing, I think that Chase Hooper is going to be in trouble. Peter Barrett's got a really good striking game that I like, some serious pop on his punches. So there's an outside shot that Chase Hooper takes a canvas nap because of not wanting to go to the ground like he should as soon as humanly possible. I can see an early finish happening in that one, but there's a chance Chase gets off the schneid. So I don't know if I necessarily want to fade him at this point. A couple questions here. Hooper by sub. Yeah, I mean, getting plus 150 on Hooper by sub, that's really his only path to victory here. Not only, I guess, he could win a decision, but he's not much of a wrestler, so I don't know if he's actually going to be able to grind this guy for 15 minutes. I think he should get the sub if he's going to get the sub. So yeah, I mean, I don't mind the sub prop whatsoever there. And then Peter Barrett by knockout, I think, would be the other way to look at it. And again, under. If I can get a 2.5, if I can get a decent under 2.5 on this one, that's the way that I'm going to be looking. Next fight up, we have got Sergey Spivak, the polar bear baby, coming in here against Jared Vanderaa. Now, Sergey Spivak is 11-2. We've got 11-4 coming on Jared. And this is a big old boy heavyweight tilt that I am very much looking forward to. Sergey trains out of Extreme Couture, and he's actually been staying there. He trains out of Russia, obviously, but recently he's been hanging out at Extreme Couture in Vegas pre-fight leading up to this thing, and he's been getting some work in with Francis Ngannou, which got to love that situation there. Strong submission attack from this kid. Nice head and arm throw. He's one of these rare people that head and arm throw you really only see in women's MMA these days, but he seems to make it work for him at the heavyweight division. Really strong, athletic, good hips, and then he's got really improved boxing. His last time out, he showed a really nice jab. He strikes well in combinations, and his big clinch knees are the thing that really sells the money for him on the feet. The only problem I have with Sergey is that sometimes he can be willing to play off of his back. He's willing to accept the bottom position and try and look for situations from there, but he's very good off of his back. He's got a good active guard. So, I mean, that's the kind of thing that I don't really want to knock him for, but it can lead to him losing decisions against stronger wrestler types. Now, he's taking on Jared Vanderaa, who comes to us from the Dana White Tuesday Night Contender Series. That's the first time we saw this kid. Big, slow, plodding, classic heavyweight here. Heavy leg kicks. He does have some seriously heavy leg kicks. He's a bit of a slow starter, but he does like to pin his opponents up against the fence and bully them against the cage. He has a strong body lock. He has decent clinch knees himself. And really the big red flag about Jared is that you just don't want this guy on top of you. He is so massive and knows how to use that weight. If he gets on top of you on the ground, his ground and pound is absolutely vicious. But he's fought a terrible level of competition. I mean, I don't think the people that he has fought would have fared very well against Sergey Spivak coming in, leading up to the UFC. And Spivak's got some decent UFC experience at this point. I gotta go with the polar bear. I don't think that Jared does anything particularly well, and I think Spivak is improving, and there's some serious upside to this kid. So even though Jared's going to have a 2-inch reach advantage, he's a little bit bigger. And his chin has held up. It's been tested a couple times. I think he's very hittable. I think Sergey can pick him apart on the feet, and if it hits the mat, I think Sergey can submit him. So Sergey's sitting around minus 230. That's that prime parlay zone, and I've gone ahead and parlayed him. That's exactly what I did. I've got a 2-unit parlay, or a 2 times parlay with someone a little bit later on the card. So we will talk about that when we get there. How's everybody feeling? It looks like we're all kind of agreeing here. Vanderaa is garbage and Spivak inside the distance. I like that. Yep, Spivak by submission is something that I like. Yeah, you know what? If Hooper's been training with Askren, I think that's a good move. He absolutely needs to be doing that. He needs to get wrestling tied in with his jiu-jitsu. Otherwise, he's going to be in trouble. Spivak, I'm just Drew. What's up, buddy? All right. Yep, sub. There we go. CNC Gaming, what's up? Thanks for hanging out with us on a Monday evening. How you doing tonight? There you go, my friend. There you go. There's your shout out. Nev Rowe, yes, we are lined up for a guest. Matt Holt from U.S. Integrity is supposed to be joining me this evening. However, there was a bit of a time zone issue. So, the show must go on. It's one of those things. I got to get the ball rolling. Everyone's waiting for us. So as soon as he pops in here, he's got the invite. We will get him right in the show. And if we missed anything, if there's a couple fights early on that we've got to recap or ask for his opinion on, we will be sure to touch on those. Mario, what's up, my friend? Thank you. Everybody in a good mood. Everybody seems to be happy when we do a little bit of winning. It's nice, right? That's how sports betting is supposed to go. So the early prelims officially are just 2 fights now. We'll flip on over here to the preliminary card. And we lost the first one here. I was really excited for this fight. Rematch, Tisha Torres, Angela Hill. This one was going to be a good time, but that one's off the card as well. So we move right along to Gavin Tucker taking on Billy Quarantino. Ivo, what's up? All right. So what we've got here is Gavin Tucker, 12-1, taking on Billy Q, who is 15-2. Really good prospect fight here at featherweight. Gavin Tucker, actually, you know what? I'm just going to say it. Both guys are Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belts. So, don't need to mention that for each one individually. Gavin Tucker has a big left body kick that he likes. He's got a good front kick. He uses that same left leg to, do like your common Muay Thai body shot, and then he also teeps to the abs, teeps to the body in the front with that same left leg. So you really got to watch out. That's one of his favorite weapons. And then you have got a strong body lock with this guy. He mixes in trips for his takedowns, and he's a solid wrestler. I mean, he's another one of these guys that has blended his Brazilian jiu-jitsu with his wrestling really, really well. I like that from Gavin Tucker. However, he slows down a little bit later in fights. We have seen that from him a couple of times before. And honestly, his striking, besides the left kicks, I'm not overly impressed. He does throw with some power, but it's not like he does anything crazy or good or anything like that. Billy Q on the flip side of this thing, this kid's got next level cardio. He never, ever stops. High output. He knows how to use his length. He fights long in ground scrambles. He's another one of these scramble master type of fighters that just never, ever settles in a position, keeps his opponent working constantly. And he attacks off of his back. I mean, he's one of these guys that once he gets on bottom, he's throwing elbows at his opponent's head and stuff like that. Very Tony Ferguson-esque. And he's a human backpack. If he gets on your back, you are in absolute trouble. He's got a nasty top game, good ground and pound, and like I said, that never slows down either. If he gets on top of you and he hammers away with those elbows and things like that, that's a problem. What Billy Q does is he breaks his opponents. The pace that he sets on them and his durability, submission defense, they can't get him out of there. And then by round 2 or round 3, they're just going, damn, dude, like, what's it gonna take? And he ratchets up another notch at that point to just keep on the pressure. If you haven't figured it out yet, I kind of like Billy Q in this spot. So what we have is a fight that essentially opened up at a pick'em. Billy Q is a slight underdog, plus 105. It's now sitting about minus 130. If you follow me on Twitter, we got Billy Q at minus 115. We went ahead and hit that kid. We hit him early. I love this straight spot. And you know what? Billy Q in round 3 sounds pretty good to me. That's probably a prop that we will be sprinkling later this evening. Gabriel agreeing with me. Billy Q is the lock. We've got Billy Q smash. Love Billy Q. Q by TKO. I love it. I love it. All right. CNC Gaming. You're saying you're a failure at life. You talk a lot of shit, but I'm a good guy. Thank you. I appreciate that. And you know what? Talking shit is okay if we're busting balls. We're having a good time with the, that kind of thing. As long as you don't get to the point of being toxic, you're okay. Just don't be toxic. Don't be an asshole. You can talk shit and we're good. It's fine. All right. Let's keep the positive vibes rolling because that's what we do here on the Diehard MMA Podcast. And speaking of positive vibes, I would like to welcome in our special guest, Matt Holt, the president of U.S. Integrity. Matt, how you doing tonight?
Clint, what's happening, my man? Sorry, I thought we were going at 7. I'm ready, though.
My bad, man. It's the daylight savings time. I had to switch it to an hour back because I live in good old Arizona where, the daylight savings time is not a thing. So to keep the show happening, I had to adjust it an hour.
Okay. All right. I'm on track now.
All right. So I assume you heard about all the COVID cancellations on this one?
Yes.
All right. So let
me make sure I'm up to date with them.
Okay.
So, yeah, no new ones, right? Tisha Torres, Angela Hill, Roberson, Jillian Robertson, Andrea Lee, and obviously way back Vettori Souza, but that's Holland Souza now.
Matt, we just lost Jing Liang and Dwight Grant.
Oh, wow. That's nice.
This one's getting absolutely carved up.
Wow, that is a bummer.
That was going to be a damn good fight. So what we've done so far on the show, I want everyone. I want you to have the opportunity to dive in here if you've got anything. We talked about Spivak versus Jared Vanderaa. We talked about Hooper taking on Peter Barrett, and we talked about Gavin Tucker, Billy Quarantillo. Is there anything that you'd like to mention on either of those 3 fights?
Billy Quarantillo, one of my favorite picks of the card. And if you go back to the Gavin Tucker fight against Rick Glenn, and I've seen this in a few Tucker fights now, he has trouble with tall guys. Rick Glenn being a big, tall, 6-foot guy. And whose body does Quarantillo almost emulate? Rick Glenn. He's a big, tall, 145-pounder, 5'10", long, lanky. And I've seen that Tucker has trouble with that kind of fighter. And at the end of the day, too, Quarantillo is a BJJ specialist down there at Gracie, Tampa. He's going to be just fine on the ground. But on the feet, that length, that reach, that height, that's the kind of guy that Tucker has had trouble with historically. Look, he's a beast on the ground. He's short, compact, he's strong. I mean, he ties people up in knots on the ground, but he's not so great on the feet, and he has trouble with tall guys. I really like Billy Quarantillo here at minus 115.
I love it.
Which I guess is starting to go up. Yeah, I did see it starting to go up now, finally.
I jumped in on minus 115 myself. We're already locked in and ready to go there. It's sitting at minus 130 now, so we're going to be ahead of this curve. People starting to realize. And you know what? Before we jump into the other stuff, Spencer, absolutely Die Hard is a Christmas movie. Matt, you want to weigh in on this one? Do you consider it a Christmas movie?
Yeah, for sure it's a Christmas movie.
All right. And did you so I've got Sergey Spivak in a parlay with something later on in the evening. And then did you have anything to add on Chase Hooper and Peter Barrett?
So a couple of sharps that I really respect think that are betting Barrett here just because the line is so big.
Yes.
And I think it's more of a fade. I think all three of them that I know that did that, it's more of a fade of Hooper than it is on that Barrett has any skill set to win this fight. But I actually think, look, I do agree that Austin Hooper has a lot of development to go. His striking game is raw, would be an understatement. I mean, his striking game is terrible. But I think he's going to be able to get Barrett down. And when he does, I think he's just going to end up subbing him. So I left it alone. I know a lot of people love Barrett because the price is so big. And Hooper, let's face it, he's a raw prospect. He needs to develop a lot of different skill sets, but he may not have to develop to get it done here against Peter Barrett. Super tough dude.
Yeah. So that's kind of where I'm looking as well. It seems we talked about it. Seems like a dog or pass spot. I'm looking at the under. Peter Barrett's just god awful off of his back. If Hooper can get it to the ground, he should have no problem getting him out of there. And then I think if he can't get it to the ground, he's probably going to end up getting TKO'd because Sarah's has no knockout power. Barrett's got some power, so I think there's a chance this thing ends early, and that's about all we got. So moving this show right along here, we got Mackenzie Dern taking on Virna Jandiroba, women's strawweight fight. Mackenzie Dern 9-1, Virna 16-1. And Matt, you know what? Since you're diving in here late, I'll let you kick this one off. What do you feel about this one?
So I think I'm going to be on the opposite end of a lot of people here. I already have a bet on the under 2.5 rounds at even money. And let's face it, both of these are jiu-jitsu specialists here, right? Mackenzie Dern, I think, what is it? Jandiroba, 13 submission wins. Yep. Mackenzie Dern, 6 sub wins and 0 knockout wins combined. We understand what both of these young ladies' games are. Dern, the more amateur, accomplished Brazilian jiu-jitsu specialist here, but Jandiroba, an ace on the ground as well. And a lot of times people say, well, you get 2 ground fighters and it turns into a slow one strike at a time stand-up affair. I think that's true when you get 2 wrestlers together and they have a hard time taking each other down, or even grapplers that are submission-based but have a good wrestling game. Mm-hmm. And here, neither one of these ladies are actually great double leg or great takedowns. They're just maybe the 2 best female submission artists, at least in that division. I actually think this one's probably going to hit the ground. I think that the way that they just are going to clunk into each other, Mackenzie Dern just finds a way to go down, even if it's getting hit or whatever. We saw against Hannah Cifers even. Granted that Cifers was massively overmatched. She just finds ways to get fights to the ground. And then we're talking about 2 Brazilian jiu-jitsu specialists. Well, go watch a BJJ event. Even the best BJJ guys in the world, they end up submitting each other. They catch each other in something. Somebody makes a mistake. So I think the idea that this fight suddenly has to become a slow one strike at a time kickboxing match just because they both have the exact same strength, which is Brazilian jiu-jitsu specialists, I don't necessarily agree with, and I ended up taking the under. And if you look at both of these ladies win their fights by submission, which is something that's pretty rare in the UFC women's divisions, is that women that can consistently finish. Mackenzie Dern, her last 3 wins, all by first-round submission. Jandiroba, 2 straight wins in the UFC by submission, including a submission win over the ultra-tough Felice Herrig. I just think somebody's getting submitted here. and I got the whole fight to do it. So at the end of the day, I'm going to take the under at even money.
Okay. So you definitely are going to be going against the grain here a little bit. For me personally, I think this is a spot where, we get so much value when these women's totals are set at even money. I'm going to be looking towards the over because the way I see this fight playing out, so you absolutely nailed it. Both of these women are jiu-jitsu specialists. Mackenzie Dern has no wrestling ability whatsoever. No. Her last couple of opponents have all essentially fallen in to her guard. They have somehow, I can't explain the bad fight IQ that has gone into her last 3 opponents, just diving into her when she gets on the ground. She doesn't get fights to the ground herself. Her opponents somehow do it for her. Agreed. Now, this is a spot where Jandiroba, I think she's smart enough to either not do that or control the situation. Virna Jandiroba has got a sick wrestling top game, and she is smothering when she gets on top of you. It's a spot where I think that it's more than likely going to play out at least a bit on the feet. And like you said, both of them are bad on the feet. No one's getting knocked out in this type of a fight. But I think that when it goes to the ground, Mackenzie will be more than happy to accept bottom position, whereas Virna will be the one looking for that control, looking for that top position. Now, will she submit Mackenzie Dern? That remains to be seen. But I think they will be savvy enough that maybe we get kind of a very slow, grindy, stalling type of women's fight here. So I'm going to wish you luck. But I've already locked in a bet on Virna Jandiroba. I got her at plus 145. And if I had to play the total, I'd be looking for the value side on that over 2.5.
Everyone I know took the over, and I said, boy, the numbers here say that these two women win by submission, and I just feel like this one's going to end up on the ground because they're both so comfortable there. It's not like you're right. I mean, Dern has no wrestling game. She will literally just fall backwards and accept top. She will accept bottom position here just to get this on the ground. And a lot of times when someone is so willing to accept bottom position, the fight ends up on the ground because neither one of them really know how to strike. Even Jandiroba. I do like the Jandiroba side. I'm very intrigued by that side. I may end up with a play on that side as well, although I am on the underside of the total. What can I say? I already bet it. It's there.
It is. We've talked about the value in going against the grain, right? Like we've talked about being able to bet against the general public, and that works out a lot. So you might not be wrong even if you're on an island. And as far as the betting line goes, I messed up. I thought that people would be seeing what I see. I can't read line movements very well. I have a hard time imagining people viewing fights other than the way that I'm viewing them. So money is flooding in here on Mackenzie Dern, and I'm very tempted to get more down on Virna Jandiroba, even though I'm not overly confident in her, making her like a 2-unit play or something like that, because the line value is just nuts to me. I think this is a 50-50 fight. I don't think either person should be overly favored, and I think that the wrestling of Jandiroba is going to be the difference maker. She's going to be the first person in the UFC that Mackenzie Dern has fought besides Amanda Ribas who is going to be able to defend a heel hook. And we saw her go to decision because she couldn't get that sub in her last fight out. Now, word on the street is that Mackenzie Dern is training with guys like Luke Rockhold, and that's a big narrative in this fight, that she's getting some higher level training and maybe her striking will be better. But I got to tell you guys a little story. There, years ago, before my wife was my wife, I was trying to impress this girl and I'm dating her, and she got me on a show called Millionaire Matchmaker. And if you haven't seen that one, it's this lady that tries to match up rich people, and they're all absolutely obnoxious. And the reason they haven't found love is because they're horrible to be around. Luke Rockhold was on an episode of Millionaire Matchmaker. They were trying to tie in with the hype of the UFC rising and stuff like that. And he dropped this girl that was drop dead gorgeous because he's a complete asshole and a womanizer. So I'm a little suspicious about Luke Rockhold maybe having some ulterior motives over there training with Mackenzie Dern.
Yeah, absolutely he might. And I don't know that training with Luke Rockhold at this point's that great. I mean, Rockhold maybe once upon a time, but his skill set deteriorated pretty quickly. And he's never been known as exactly the most dedicated guy in the gym for all of his other talents.
She might catch the disease that his chin has too. You want to stay away from that guy.
Yeah.
All right, so we've got Matt taking a look at the under. I am leaning to the over, and I've got a bet on Virna Jandiroba in this spot. With the line moving the opposite direction, very tempted to add more. So keep touch on that one.
This could be one of those situations you and I talk about it all the time. When do you bet a fight? Let's face it here. When it comes to the promotion and the name, Mackenzie Dern is the A side of the equation here. And I wouldn't be surprised if in a bigger card like this, and we tend to see it in pay-per-views, where people, hey, I want to bet the pay-per-view. I'm excited. Oh, I know Mackenzie Dern. I'll bet her. I'm not sure this line's going to come back down in a hurry. So if you like Jandiroba, I don't know that there's any rush to bet, because I think you might be able to get plus 170, plus 165 by Saturday.
I like it. I'm going to sit back and see where this thing goes. That's definitely something that I'm going to have to keep an eye on. Good advice on sitting tight there if you decide to go on Virna. So we have got 289 live viewers. I just want to go ahead and shout out the chat again. Say thank you all so much for hanging out with us this evening on the show. There's a double header going on in the NFL. The fact that we've got this many people hanging out live to talk MMA is just thumbs up. Thank you all very much. Do us a favor, hit that like button, share the show out there. Get us let's get up there to 400 if we can. See if we can pull that off by the time the show wraps up here. Next up, we've got a very interesting fight, in my opinion, between Cub Swanson and Daniel Pineda. So Cub, we all know Cub. He's been around featherweight forever, 26-11. Daniel Pineda is a guy who has been, he was out of the UFC. He came into the UFC, got his ass kicked, left the UFC, did okay on the regional scene, popped for performance-enhancing drugs, and then he came back and destroyed everybody's darling, mine included, Herbert Burns. So he's coming in here with a decent bit of hype, and he's a finisher. Daniel Pineda, over 27 wins, has never won a decision. He's got a 100% finish rate. This dude is nuts. He is the definition of a kill or be killed fighter. Now, Cub's been doing some work with TJ Dillashaw, which in my book is a big thumbs up. I think TJ's still got it. That's a very good company to have leading up to this fight. He's got sharp boxing. He moves and cuts angles extremely well. He's willing to stand in the pocket and trade when he needs to. Nice head movement. He's got a good little head kick that he snaps up there and catches people with. And he's always working the body and the legs, which just banks for later rounds. I love when fighters do that. He's a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt, but he's had a problem with submissions. His opponents in the UFC have been able to take him down and submit him, and it seems like that's a big, big hole in his game that they're almost setting Daniel Pineda up for the win here, because this guy is sick on the ground. But I want to read off the names that Cub Swanson has lost to by submission. Renato Moicano, who's a high-level Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt. Brian Ortega, who's a one-time title challenger and going to be next-time title challenger. Max Holloway, Frankie Edgar. I mean, Ricardo Lamas, all the way back in 2011. The guys that are submitting Cub Swanson are the cream of the crop, the absolute pinnacle of the division. I don't know if Daniel Pineda belongs in that category, and I think he might be getting a bit too much rub coming off of that derailing of the hype train Herbert Burns after Herbert Burns had a god-awful, horrific weight cut. Daniel Pineda sitting about minus 150 right now, plus 125 on Cub Swanson. Matt, I think there might be some value on the dog here. What do you think?
I'm with you on the dog, and while you mentioned all the names that he lost to, let's talk about some of the guys that Cub Swanson has beat in the UFC. Charles Oliveira, Jeremy Stevens, Dustin Poirier, Dennis Seaver. I mean, this guy has one of the most impressive resumes for a guy that's never won a title ever in MMA. And at the end of the day, I don't know that he destroyed Gilbert Burns, Daniel Pineda. So if you watch that fight, Burns had his shot to put Pineda away and completely gassed out. I mean, he had nothing in the tank from that weight cut, or he would have finished Pineda himself. And Pineda has 13 losses for a reason, because he's a wild man and he tends to leave himself open. I just think that Cub Swanson, while he's on the wrong side of the mountain, he's 1-4 in his last 5. And granted, those 4 losses were against some of the names you mentioned, as well as Hurricane Shane Burgos, who's also very tough.
He went to a split with Shane.
Yes. and is coming off a win now in his last fight, Cub. And you always worry, okay, this is a guy who's, basically on the wrong side. Is he even training hard anymore? But came out and put together a pretty solid performance against Kron Gracie in his last to reassure me that he's still training hard, still in the gym. I just think these guys are light years apart in terms of experience, ability, all-around skill set. Daniel Pineda is going to be really dangerous in this fight for about a round. And if he doesn't get that early sub and early takedown, I just think Cub Swanson striking is really going to start to take over this fight. I think if the fight goes 3 rounds, Cub definitely wins round 2 and 3. And there's a possibility he finishes Pineda, because Pineda goes like a buzzsaw trying to get that takedown early. But if he doesn't get it, he will empty the tank trying to get it. This is a guy who's used to losing when he doesn't get a finish. And I think if he doesn't get that finish early, look for Cub Swanson. And for all of you who have availability to bet in play, and this is one of the areas I've really done amazingly well this year, because in-play betting in UFC is still fairly new in terms of a lot of books offering it being widely available. But a lot of books are at least starting to offer it between rounds, especially on the pay-per-view cards. There is a pretty good chance that Pineda will get a takedown sometime in round 1, because he relentlessly pursues them. I mean, he will empty the tank trying to get one. And it may end up being 10-9 Pineda after 1. If it is, go ahead and take a shot on Cub Swanson in play, because Pineda does not have a gas tank. He's 35 years old as well. This isn't a young, up-and-coming prospect against Cub Swanson. They're 35 and 37, and you could say that Pineda has had a lot of wars, a lot of fights, and steroid use, which we all know what happens to some of these guys after performance-enhancing drug use. So these guys are basically the same age in terms of fighting age. I think there's a lot of value on Cub here, and there could be some good value in play on Cub.
I completely agree, and I'm really, really glad that you mentioned the live betting, because I think that's a huge factor here, that if you can live bet, we expect Pineda to win the first round. Absolutely, he's going to come out like a bat out of hell, but if he doesn't get that finish, you're going to get an even bigger plus number on Cub. And like you said, he should absolutely take over. He should just be the more technical fighter in there. He should be able to outbox Pineda for the last 2 rounds. And Pineda has never won a decision. This guy has no capability of winning a decision. He throws big, wide hooks, and he throws 100% with everything looking to kill his opponent. And I've just got this crazy sense that if Shane Burgos, who set almost a record of 134 significant strikes on Cub Swanson, couldn't get him out of there by knockout, I don't know if Pineda is going to be the guy to do it. So I think this is a submission or bust spot for Daniel Pineda, and I think Cub Swanson by decision is a nice little look if you want to get a little extra value there on the dog line. But as long as money keeps on coming in on Pineda, we might have to fade him here.
Yeah, I'm definitely fading him. I already bet Cub once, and I wouldn't be surprised if Cub knocks him out. Just because Pineda, I could see a Pineda really gassing and Cub landing that big right hand late in round 3 and maybe getting him out of there.
Yep, I absolutely, I could see that as well. Now, Stomp, I do want to reply here to this, my friend. So you're talking about Cub Swanson being 0-4 before he beat Kron Gracie. Well, let me tell you, first off, the Kron Gracie decision was unanimous. He schooled that kid on the feet. Yes, his face didn't look too good for the wear for it, but he was absolutely the winner of that fight. The 4 fighters that he fought before that, Shane Burgos, who is knocking on the door being a contender, much younger, ridiculous reach advantage. Renato Moicano, who's a guy that took him down and submitted him. Again, another guy who's a potential contender, much younger, much taller, much longer. Frankie the Answer Edgar, who's a legend. And then Brian Ortega, who's a submission wizard and a title challenger. Like, he's only losing to the absolute top of the division. Do you put Daniel Pineda in with that category of opponent? I don't.
No.
All right. So taking a look at Cub Swanson, maybe another dog play. And I got to tell you guys, I think dogs are barking on this card. I think there's a lot of inflated lines. I think there's a lot of recency bias. And I'm pretty upset, Matt, because the Dolce Lungiambula fight being off, I had a dog play on Dolce at plus 220.
Oh, nice. I had a big play on Felicia Torres at plus 105 against Angela Hill. And I'm pretty bummed out because I think that Torres is on a good run, and her style would have matched up well with Angela Hill. So
that would have been a really fun fight.
yeah.
Really fun fight. All right. So next fight up, we have got, well, we're supposed to have Andrea KGB Lee and Jillian Robertson. That one's off. My girl Jillian will be fighting next week. What we have up next is Ciryl Gane taking on Junior Dos Santos. Junior is an absolute legend in the heavyweight division, 21-8. Ciryl Gane is undefeated, maybe the brightest prospect outside of Francis Ngannou that we've ever seen. 6-0 undefeated heavyweight, just absolutely massive, crazy athletic, taking his step up here. But another spot where I'm worried there might be a little bit of overhype. It's a really tough situation because I do think that Ciryl Gane wins this fight, but I think the line is a little bit wide. I think Junior Dos Santos is being ever so slightly disrespected here. He was able to defend all the takedowns of Curtis Blaydes, and it wasn't until Curtis Blaydes resorted to basically attacking him from range, which Junior never saw coming. He got clipped with a big long shot, and the referee saved him, got him out of there. And then he's coming off of 3 knockout losses, bad knockout losses. And, Junior Dos Santos has shown flashes of his former self. He's one of the most well-rounded, skilled fighters in the heavyweight division today. It's just that durability that's fallen off of a cliff. I think the speed of Ciryl Gane is going to be a problem, and even though he will win this fight, he's not going to look like a minus 400 until he lands that shot, and then Junior Dos Santos will cover up, and I think it's going to be just like the Blaydes fight. I think the reach advantage of Ciryl Gane is going to get him a standing, referee-saving TKO win here.
It reminds me of Chuck Liddell at the end of his career, where his sprawl and brawl was still as good. He still had some of the best takedown defense at 205. His hand speed was still the same. He still threw that same looping hook that when he hit people did the same damage. It's just that when you touched his chin, he went down, and that's JDS. I thought JDS looked fine against Rosenstruck in the last one until he got clipped once, and then it was over. Yep. And that's kind of been the issue now. 6 of his 8 losses are by knockout, JDS. 3 straight knockout losses. It's becoming a real trend here. What I don't get is, and I thought might be a real opportunity for all of us to make a little money on this fight, is JDS's only shot really in this fight is to win by knockout. People forget that Ghana is also a undefeated Muay Thai champion. Professional Muay Thai champion. I think he's 9-0 as a professional Muay Thai fighter.
Two-time world champion.
Yeah, really good. So I don't think that there's he's not going to out-volume him. If they get in the clinch, Ghana's going to land those knees and elbows. And I don't think JDS at this point at 36 has the explosiveness to get this thing to the ground and accomplish anything there. So at the end of the day, to me, it feels like if JDS is going to win and he has plenty of pop still, he needs to land a big punch, and it probably needs to come early. And Ghana, let's face it, JDS every time he gets clipped now goes to sleep. But the total on this thing is 1.5 rounds over minus 125. I like the under plus 105 here. I think at the end of the day, the most likely scenario in this fight, if you look at what the odds tell you, is Ghana by first round knockout. Well, why do I get, you have to lay minus 430 on Gane, but I get plus 105 that he gets it done in the first round? Not just him, that the fight ends in the first 7.5 minutes. Yep. That's the way I'm leaning here.
I couldn't agree more. That's a great look on this spot just because of the durability issues of JDS. And it's not like Ciryl Gane is one of these slow starters. It's not like he's a guy that takes some time to get out there and get going. He hurt both of his previous opponents who are known for their durability in the first round and could have put them both away early. But these are young studs that have chins that were able to fight through it and survive and then drag this fight out late. I don't think JDS has got that anymore, and that's kind of my only issue. And like you said, if Junior's going to win this fight, he needs to win it early. So he's going to have to rip back and fire back immediately if he's going to get this win. So I think this fight ends early myself as well.
And JDS has shown a little pop. Go back and watch that Rosenstruck fight. He hit him in the first round. He tagged him and had an opportunity there. Look, JDS is really dangerous early. We know Gane's really dangerous. And JDS has no chin left, plus 105 on that under. And I think we talked about waiting to bet against Mackenzie Dern. Don't wait to bet this under. It will close under 1.5, 1.5 rounds under minus money. Those pluses will not be out there for long this week.
I agree. That's probably going to get chalked up real quick. And Reclaim James, my friend, you are just in time, because the next fight that we have to talk about is Kevin Holland taking on Jacare Souza. We had a little fruit basket situation where Kevin Holland popped for COVID, so Vettori stepped in for his opponent last week. We made some little profit off of that, and now Kevin Holland is taking on Vettori's original opponent in Ronaldo Jacare Souza. Great fight coming up here, and very interesting in my opinion. So I've got a rule, Matt. I don't know if you remember my rule, but you don't bet on fighters that are over the age of 40 unless you've got a damn good reason to do so. And unless I'm mistaken, Jacare's birthday was today. I believe he just turned 41.
41, yep.
So he's 41 years old, taking on Kevin Holland, one of the most exciting prospects in the division, in my opinion. The big question around Holland is his fight IQ. He just does some of the most ridiculous things out there because he's having fun. He's highly entertaining to watch. He can finish people. He's a high-level jiu-jitsu player. He's got pop in his punches, good boxing. He's going to have a redonkulous 9-inch reach advantage in this fight. The only issue that I have is that Kevin Holland accepts the bottom position, and we just recently saw him get out grappled by Darren the Dentist Stewart, a guy that is not known for his grappling or his wrestling chops. In fact, people usually use that against him. Jacare is coming off of taking on some of the highest level athletes in his division, still doing it kind of like Yoel has been. He's been getting the L's. He's on the wrong side. But he's been competitive. I mean, even against Jan Blachowicz at 205 when he moved up there, he was working on takedowns constantly in a 5-round title fight. And it was a number one contender title fight, sorry. But it was a main event. He lost a split decision to Jan Blachowicz, who is now the reigning king at 205. I think if Souza comes out here and does the same exact thing, I think he can take Holland down. And I think he might be able to grind out a 15-minute win over Holland, who just has no idea how to get off of his back.
I'm not so confident in Jacare here. And here's my problem. Jacare at his best never had an amazing takedown offense. His jiu-jitsu game was maybe the best we ever saw at 205. So good. But he also doesn't have a pure wrestling takedown game. He doesn't shoot that double leg or have an explosive single or pick up and slam. He just never had that game. It was just once he got you there, oh my gosh. I mean, Jacare stands for the alligator in Portuguese, obviously, because once he got the chomps on you, you never got back up. But what we've seen lately is a guy who can't get it. Remember the Chris Weidman fight? It was a slow, plodding kickboxing fight, and Blachowicz, again, is a lot slower than Kevin Holland's going to be at 185. So Jacare went up to 205, strategically picked some opponents to not only try to win a title, but also guys that were slower, because at 41, he is not fast. He was never exactly a speed demon, but he's even slower now. Kevin Holland is going to have massive height and reach advantages and speed advantages in this fight. And at 41, I'm just not sure how Jacare is going to deal with those unless he gets early takedowns. But for him to get takedowns, he has to get Holland against the fence, pick him up, because he's not just going to openly get a takedown, I don't feel like. And I think Holland knows that the only way I lose this fight is if I get taken down. I think he's going to be extra aware of not – the Darren Stewart fight, first of all, he was winning all fight, got taken down in the 3rd round. So he had a 2-round lead, and he was trying to do some of his Kevin Holland stuff. I agree the fight IQ is not always there for Holland. But I think in fights where he's looked for the takedown, Alexander Hernandez rushing in to get it, or in some other situations, he's been pretty good dealing with it. We'll see. I mean, Brandon Allen gave him problems. Brandon Allen's a grappler. But I like the activity from Holland, too. I think sometimes with young developing fighters, the best thing they can do is keep fighting, go back to the gym and train. Keep fighting, go back to the gym and train. And Kevin Holland already has 4 wins in 2020. This will be the 5th fight for Kevin Holland in 2020. Just that activity alone. And some guys, that's when you're at your best. You're fighting, you're training. You're training, you're fighting. You don't have time for distractions. You don't have time to get off track, and maybe that's what Kevin Holland needs, because you're right, his fight IQ isn't the best, but his activity level right now is just unbelievable. For me, it's Holland or pass here, and I already bet Holland once at -130, and I'm considering doing it again. I think Jacare's done. I love him too. I mean, he's one of those guys everybody loves. I love the way he changed himself late in his career. Hey, I'm too old to explosively get takedowns, so I'm going to knock you out, Chris Weidman. Awesome. But he was losing that fight. He was getting outstruck for 2 straight rounds on his feet to Chris Weidman, and then got that late knockout. But that's not his game. Jacare in his prime was get you down and wrap you up in some submission that you didn't want to be in. Good for him for reinventing himself a little bit. But if this fight plays out 3 rounds on its feet, Jacare has very little chance of winning.
I can definitely see the point, and this is a spot where I'm not necessarily looking to bet on Jacare because, like I said, my rule, you don't bet on fighters over the age of 40 unless you got a damn good reason, and I don't have a damn good reason besides the sketchy takedown defense of Kevin Holland. So this is probably going to end up being a pass for me, but I can see a clear path to victory for Jacare, so that's going to keep me off of Kevin Holland. I think what I would look for is maybe an over in this spot, because the one thing that Jacare has been in the tailing twilight of his career is he's still durable. He doesn't go down unless he takes an absolute beating, and if he does mix in the takedowns like I think he will, I think he's good enough at jiu-jitsu that Holland is not going to be able to submit him. And we know Holland can put people down on the feet. That's absolutely true. But Jacare is a tank, and he keeps himself safe. He has a high guard, and he's got good, sound defensive striking. I think he'll be able to basically take what Holland puts out, tie him up, press him against the fence, maybe take it to the ground, get back up, rinse and repeat. I think this one goes over. I'd be looking more at Holland by decision or the over 2.5 if I was going to make a play on this one, but I might steer completely clear.
I don't hate Kevin Holland by decision. First of all, he's not a big one-shot puncher. He's more dangerous with his knees and elbows than he probably is with his fist. Despite the fact that he has good hand speed and throws good straight shots, he's just not a big power puncher, but I certainly think he's going to throw more shots, land more shots, and be a little bit more creative on the feet. The only thing that worries me about Kevin Holland, it's not even his takedown defense. It's really just how does a guy who so recently was getting over COVID deal with it? And I've heard people say, hey, I didn't even know I had it. I was fine. And I know people that got COVID 3 months ago that say I'm still not 100% yet. And that I have fatigue issues and breathing issues still. And I'm like, I don't know what to think. I'm not trying to say it's a factor because we don't know, but it could be. And if it affects his breathing and his fatigue level at all, then it could be an issue. Other than that, I'm not really worried about the takedowns. I think Holland, his takedown, I think he's going to be able to escape him. Because Jacare's not a natural wrestler, as good as his jiu-jitsu is. And I think if it stays on its feet, he just outworks him.
I can absolutely see that happening. All right. So, I mean, it sounds like a little dissension here in the ranks. That's fine. This is a close competitive fight that could go a lot of different ways. So, all right. I like it. That's the best part about getting on these shows and talking these things out, having a second brain involved is you can see the other side, you can see the other side of the coin that you maybe could not have gotten to otherwise. We have got 356 live viewers here. Thank you all so much for hanging out with us here on the show. My esteemed guest, Matt Holt, the president of US Integrity, hanging out with us to break down UFC 256. I do want to give a shout out to our other sponsors here on the show. GOAT Capital Sports. You can find them at GOAT Capital _ on Twitter. They do a handicapping service, $9.99 monthly for all the other sports out there, college basketball, football, baseball, all the stuff that I can't help you with whatsoever. My football pick for this evening was Antonio Gibson, touchdown anytime, and he went out with an injury on the very first play of the game. So don't trust me on any sport besides mixed martial arts. So moving right along, we're getting to the top end of the card here. Unfortunately, it's going to be a bit of a short evening because of all these COVID cancellations. So we're winding down already, but we've got a good one here. A lightweight fight between Renato Moicano and Rafael Fiziev. Really great matchmaking here, in my opinion. Moicano is 14-3-1, had a bit of a rough run at 145, moving up to 155 and has looked like a new man. Rafael Fiziev, not the biggest 155er, but a little tank. He is the striking coach over at Tiger Muay Thai, which is one of the absolute best gyms for MMA in the world. And the fact that he's the one teaching all these people like Peter Yan how to strike, who is a champion, like this guy's striking is next level. He's the guy that you know from doing the Matrix move in his last fight where he bent over backwards to avoid a body kick just to kind of show off and have a little flair in the fight there. This kid is sick. So the way this fight plays out for me, we've got Moicano, who's a sick grappler, but doesn't really have much of a submission offense so far in the UFC. He's been more of a tight technical boxer, doesn't really have a lot of power. He relies on his volume to get it done. And unless he has a very opportunistic situation to snap up a neck or something like that, he doesn't really use that Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt inside the cage. I think this is going to be a striking fight. Fiziev has a 100% takedown defense rating. So I don't see Moicano being able to drag him to the floor. And these guys are going to mix it up on the feet with Moicano looking to use his maybe speed and reach advantage. And Fiziev basically using his entire arsenal. This guy has everything in his bag that he can mix up and use. My only question is the durability of Moicano. I'm wondering if he's one of these guys where cutting down to 145 caused a problem, because he is a big 145er. And we've seen people move up a weight class and have it just give benefits left and right to their durability, their cardio, everything. They look like a new person when they move up a weight class. And we know Fiziev is a guy who likes to style. He likes to get into a 15-minute battle. He's not afraid of that, and he doesn't mind picking people apart. So I don't know that he's going to be necessarily looking for the kill. And if Moicano does not have durability issues at 155, I think this thing goes to the cards, and it's a very close competitive fight. What's your read on this one, Matt?
Yeah, I'm with you, and I actually bet the over on this, and it's really 2.5 over 2.5 minus 110. I saw it went up a little bit to like minus 115 or minus 120, but it's still basically a pick'em price. And I'm with you. I think there's better durability for Moicano as he's moved up, and I thought the same thing you did. Here's a guy who's known for his Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, who has 0 wins by knockout. Yet all we ever see is him in slugfest. I remember his famous slugfest with Brian Ortega, where they just went at it, standing up. I mean, for two BJJ guys, they just stood and traded the whole fight, and he can mix it up. Don't get me wrong. It's easy to look at him and say, oh, 0 knockouts. This guy has no bang. He can mix it up on the feet. His boxing is pretty good. And what I think's going to happen is he's going to try to get Fiziev against the fence and maybe get some takedowns. But I think Fiziev's defense is so good, you're going to see some stall moments where they're dirty boxing, they're clinching up, they're striking in the clinch. But I don't think that I think there's going to be a lot more activity on the fence than you realize. And because of that, I think at the end of the day, this one's going to go 3 rounds, and he might as well bet the over. I actually thought about betting Fiziev in this fight because 2 weeks ago, when this fight was originally announced on a different card and it got moved to this one, you could get Fiziev at minus 105. Now it's as high as minus 155. Look, at around even money, I liked Fiziev because I think he's the better striker, will throw more technical strikes, and at the end of the day is probably going to win what I agree with you is going to be a stand-up fight, despite the fact that Moicano has such great jiu-jitsu. But at minus 155, I am very much less interested in betting Fiziev on the side, the smaller guy, the shorter guy. And I just figure I'll bet the over because I always thought he'd win by decision anyway and lay minus 115 instead of minus 155. And then you also get the built-in advantage that if Moicano ends up getting some top control time, gets a takedown or a trip along the fence and can steal a couple rounds, then you don't lose if he wins the decision too, and you never know with the judges. But I do think this one's going to hit the scorecards, and I'm going to go ahead and lay over 2.5 rounds at minus 115.
That's the way I'm looking too. Why pick a side? I don't think we have any need to pick a side, and we've seen the horrific judging the last couple weeks at the UFC Apex. I don't want to lay minus 150 and then have someone lose me a split when Moicano gets his hand raised and everyone screams robbery. I like the over 2.5, and if you can get it anywhere from that minus 110 to minus 140 type of range, that's the way that I'd be looking in this fight. Even though both these guys are dangerous, they're both I don't want to say that Moicano is durable because we've seen him get finished before, but they're both so technical. And I do think that the reach advantage of Moicano will let him stay safe and will make it harder for Fiziev to find that finish. Plus, at 155, I do think he will be a little bit more durable. So yeah, I think it's going over too.
All right, is there a trigger price for you? So one of my friends who's a really astute MMA bettor said that he has a plus 150 alarm. He calls them alarms on this fight where, hey, basically the fight was supposed to be a couple of weeks ago and it was a pick'em. If you give me plus 150 on a fight that was supposed to be a pick'em, I don't care what your handicap is. I'm just going to take it. Do you think that there's a price for you in this fight where, because this thing's gone from pick'em to minus 155 now, Is there a point where there's just too much value on Moicano and maybe you take a shot?
I mean, yes, kind of. So the problem, I'm always looking for value. I'm absolutely always trying to be on that side. And in this fight, I do think it's kind of a 50-50 with the way these guys match up. So it should be a pick'em price tag. And if you're getting plus, I don't know, like for me, it has to be a little bit more on the plus side because I slightly lean to Fiziev. If I had to pick a winner in this fight, I would pick Fiziev. So because of that, I'm not going to take plus 130 on Moicano, even though there's a little bit of thin value there. I would need like plus 170. I would need that extra enticement that I'm going, okay, my brain knows that it's 50-50, but my heart is telling me that Fiziev is going to pull off the win. I need some serious number to actually help me get to the other side of the fence because I think it's going to be close, which another reason why I'm looking at the over 2.5 rather than picking a side like that, because I don't want to lay with Fiziev and then be wrong. And then I also don't want to take the dog and go, dang it, I said it was Fiziev all week. Yeah. So I'll play the over, and if he lands a big body shot and crumples the kid or something like that, I'll eat that loss all day. That's fine.
I agree. I'm not sure what the number is for me either. I do think if it continues to climb, it may at least start getting enticing for me to take that side. I mean, Moicano does have wins over Calvin Kattar. He chopped up Cub Swanson and submitted him. I mean, he has some legit wins along the way. And, I mean, that fight with Ortega was a classic. That was a great fight. So, I mean, I don't know what the price is for me either. I'm already on the over, but if it gets to like 160, 170, I may have to take a shot as well.
Yeah. And there, Jandiroba already climbing up there and getting juicy for people across the pond.
Big time. I saw plus 165 earlier, too, before I came on the show.
Hey, like I said, I botched that line. I got plus 145 in my pocket, but geez, I might have to add more. If she gets up to like plus 180 or something like that, I'll be throwing in another shot. All right. So what we have next here is maybe, even though we've got a sick main event, maybe the best fight on the card. The co-main event here, lightweight fight between Tony Ferguson, the boogeyman, El Cucuy, taking on Charles Oliveira. We've got Tony, who's 26-4, Oliveira, the young gun in the division that is finally getting his shot to step up and attempt to crack into that contenders circle with a ton of experience, 29-8. This kid has so many fights under his belt for this point in his career. Now, Tony, absolutely unorthodox striking. You never know what this guy is going to throw at you. Spinning stuff, teep kicks up the middle. He forces a brawl with his opponents, constant forward pressure, death by 1,000 cuts. I mean, he's this guy that has honed his elbow game specifically to slice open the skin of his opponent's face. Is just absolutely vicious type of fighter. And in my opinion, it took a double weight cut and the championship Gaethje, the best Gaethje we've ever seen, to take out Tony Ferguson and break his ridiculous win streak in the lightweight division. Charles Oliveira, sick Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. We all know this guy's ground game is next level. He chains submissions attacks over and over and over, stands tall, very much improved striking over the last couple of years, a nice classic Muay Thai style. And, man, this is a tough fight to call. When they opened it up, they had Tony Ferguson about minus 185, and it was a flood of money on Charles Oliveira. Throughout the week, that number has been creeping back towards the opener. All the action recently coming in on Tony Ferguson, and he's out there anywhere from minus 160 to minus 185 in spots. I'm going to go ahead and let you kick this one off, Matt. What are you feeling on this fight?
Look, as much as I love Tony Ferguson, I am all over the Bronx here. I already have two bets on Charles Oliveira, one at plus 155, one at plus 160. I really think it's his time right now. I mean, guys just go through their time or their development where they hit a certain peak, and he is on it right now. And I love the activity by the Bronx. One of the greatest things as we've seen is when guys really go on runs and look their absolute peak, perfect, finest form they could be in. Usually it's because they're really active. And he had 7 fights, Oliveira, between June of 2018 and March of 2020. So 18 months, 7 fights. That's about a fight every 2.5 months. That's a really good pace. I love the shoot box training and what it's done to his Muay Thai striking. And at the end of the day, Justin Gaethje didn't just beat Tony Ferguson. He took his soul. I mean, he beat the soul out of that man. Oh, my goodness. Sometimes those type of knockouts you never return from. Think about Renan Barrett. Renan Barrett was the best fighter on the planet. He was on this 30-fight win streak, the bantamweight champion. He's running through the division. And then he got knocked out by TJ Dillashaw. He was never, ever the same again. And sometimes it happens in MMA where we see guys get knocked out viciously and they are just never, ever the same again. And at 36 years old, Tony Ferguson didn't just get the soul beat out of him in his last fight here in May. He's been in a lot of wars. This isn't a guy who's been this dominating guy that won those 12 in a row. Kevin Lee was winning the fight before Ferguson put him in a triangle choke. Lando Venata was landing big shots and had Tony Ferguson in trouble. RDA was a war. Even though Ferguson was on the right side of that war, it was a war. He's never in easy fights. He's 36 years old. It seems like it's getting away from him for a little bit. Look, I heard he overtrains already. Everyone I know said the guy always overtrains for cards. And between all that overtraining and the years of wars, I'm just not sure what he has left. I think Charles Oliveira has been the most avoided lightweight on the roster the last 6 months. Nobody wants to fight this guy right now because of how hot he is and how dangerous he is. Tony's going to be a little bit naturally bigger. He's probably actually the more powerful guy, but I think it's Oliveira's time, and I just can't help but feeling he's going to get it done Saturday night.
All right. So in addition to you, Matt, somebody who I highly respect in the MMA world is on Charlie O this week in a big way. And man, the tape tells me another story. I'm on Tony Ferguson's side here in this one, and I'm really pissed off that I missed out on the spike that got Tony down to about minus 125 because I would have hammered Tony at a pick'em line here in this spot. One thing that I really like to do is fade fighters who take a step up in competition. I totally get what you're saying with Tony taking the beating from Justin, and I totally understand having your soul taken. I don't know that I agree with that's what happened to Tony in that particular fight. He didn't protest the stoppage. He knew that he was beat, but he also didn't get flatlined, and that's where generally we see the guys who I feel like just never look the same again, is when they take that one big shot where they're staring up at the lights, they take 5 minutes to wake up. I feel like that's more when we see it. Tony has taken, yes, he's taken a lot of damage over the course of his career, but he never had that switch flipped off. He's never quite gone out that hard before. So I think he's still in this thing. I think he's still got it. And let's look at some of the names on Tony's run here. Rafael Dos Anjos, Kevin Lee, Anthony Pettis, Donald Cerrone. I mean, yeah, maybe an older Pettis, an older Cerrone, but still guys that were vying at the top of the division. Over on Charles Oliveira's side of things, we've got David Tamer, a guy who doesn't belong in the UFC. Jim Miller, a first round or bust submission artist who lost the submission war. Nick Lentz, a guy who we haven't heard from and is probably going to be retired here. Jared Gordon, my number one fade in the UFC when it comes to chin issues. And I made so much on Oliveira by knockout that night because I knew he was going to land a big shot on chinny Jared Gordon. And then Kevin Lee, who is a fighter that I massively respect and I think could have world champion potential. but he makes horrible choices. I had the Kevin Lee fight 1-1 going into round 3, and when he went for that takedown, it was just a classic Kevin Lee oops moment. I think he was doing everything right up until that point. And Charles Oliveira is a guy that showed me signs of breaking. I know he hasn't done it in a long time because he's been on this nasty streak of finishes, first and second round finishes, but he quits. We've seen him quit before against Anthony Pettis, Ricardo Lamas, Paul Felder. He just shuts down. He's a good hammer and a bad nail. Tony is the ultimate hammer. This guy never stops coming forward. And I know what you're saying with Charles Oliveira having underrated striking. His Muay Thai is very improved. It's a whole lot better. But I don't think he has anything that's going to get the respect of Tony Ferguson. And when Tony comes at him in round 2, when his blood is dripping down his face and he's still smiling at Charles Oliveira and walking him down and landing elbows, I think Oliveira will cave. I think Oliveira will break. And I think this has got Tony round 3 or Tony by decision, in my opinion, written all over it.
I mean, you talk about the Kevin Lee fight, which I think was close going into round 3. I agree with. But Kevin was beating Tony. This is classic Kevin Lee in every fight. Yeah, he gets out to an early lead and fades horribly. He was beating Tony Ferguson pretty handily.
He's the worst nail in the division.
Yeah, and then he got caught in a triangle. So at the end of the day, Kevin Lee, I think they both were in the same situation. Kevin Lee faded. And I do agree that he quit against Pettis in a fight that he was having a lot of success in against Pettis. And then that was the point where he said, I'm too big to cut down to 145. This has to end. I'm going to go back to 55, and I'm going to start training my ass off on my stand-up and shoot box. And you're right. It's hard to gauge where he is according to who he's fought on the way back. Look, Nick Lentz is a tough guy, at least. It was worth test. Jared Gordon, again, a tough guy. At least it was, worth testing. But I also feel like Tony's got, while there's a lot of names on his list, a lot of those names happened at the perfect time. An old Cowboy Cerrone, an old Anthony Pettis. Kevin Lee was beating him. It was an aging RDA after RDA had already lost the title. Maybe his most impressive performance is when he beat Edson Barbosa back at 215 when Barbosa was really, on top of his game. But besides that, I mean, it was Gleason Tebows and the Abel Churrillos of the world. And I think both of these guys don't necessarily, I think resumes equal is what I'm trying to say. Because when you look at it, I mean, Oliveira's fought Max Holloway, and he's been in there with some legit guys. Granted, he lost to him. He's been in there with some legit guys, too. So they both been in there with some legit guys. I think if both fighters were 100% right, a peak Tony Ferguson against a peak Oliveira, then you're right. Tony Ferguson wins. But Tony Ferguson's had to deal with torn ACLs, massive injuries, longer layoffs, too many wars, overtraining, age isn't on his side. I think if you're right, and Tony Ferguson is close to 100% off injuries and off recovery from the beating from Gaethje, then you're probably going to end up on the right side of this one. But you got to lay a little bit to get there now.
Yeah.
But if you're not right and he's not quite 100% and he slowed down a little bit and Father Time's catching up with him a bit, then maybe this Oliveira gets him Saturday night.
It's true. All right. And I love the dissension. I love being on opposite sides on this one and seeing both sides of the coin. This is your fight of the night, folks. Like either way you dice it, nobody else on this card is getting awarded that bonus for fight of the night. This one's going to be absolutely sick. I'm looking forward to it. Like I said, what I'm going to do is sit tight. Those 383 live viewers, if you're on my side and you like you some Tony Ferguson here, sit tight because right now the market is coming in on Charles Oliveira. So if I can get this line back down to around that minus 150 spot, that's my sweet spot. That's where I really want to be. I'll take Tony Ferguson at minus 160. I'll take Tony Ferguson at minus 170, but I want to get the best price I possibly can for this one. Next up,
if Tony looks 100% at weigh-ins, if he looks ripped and 100%, if he looks great at the press conferences, if he seems sharp and he looks ripped at the weigh-ins, and at the open workouts, it looks like his knees are good and he's moving well, what does this line close at? Tony 180?
I would say more like, honestly, if he looks that good, I would say this thing probably closes around 200.
Wow. So if you like Tony then and you expect that he's in fit, then maybe you want to get it now.
The only reason I'm waiting is because I've got my handy dandy best fight odds up and I can see where the money's kind of coming in across the market on MMA matches. And so far the money is coming in on Charles Oliveira. So I'm hoping it drives that line down for me. But if I see it poke the other direction, yeah, I'm going to jump on Tony.
Yeah, I'm really interested to see where this one's going to land. Because I know some sharp people on both sides, and I'm going to be interested to see where it goes. Because I think that there's equal chances that it closes Ferguson minus 200 as Ferguson minus 120.
That's true. That's true. There's a lot of people who have pegged Charles Oliveira as the next big thing at 155. I know a lot of them. Yeah. So I think there's going to be a lot of support, both sharp and public, for Charles Oliveira in this spot. And then there's going to be a lot of people like myself and then a lot of public who know Tony Ferguson and the run he's been on, and Tony versus Khabib. Like, there's a lot of different ways that you can get to the Tony side, and you're going, who's this Brazilian kid? I haven't seen him. I don't know what he's about. You'll bet with the favorite that you're recognizing. And then there's a lot of sharp people that kind of probably think the same way I do, where you don't just jump off ship because he lost to the number one contender in the division. And there's some value on him here, a kind of a buy low spot for Tony Ferguson. So, yeah, I think there's going to be a lot of two-sided action on this one. This line could ping pong all week.
And I think it's the favored fight by everyone. Everyone who loves MMA, this is the fight they're targeting rather than the main event. This is the main event of the MMA community. There might not be a shiny belt on the line, but this is our main event. This is our industry main event.
Absolutely. Yeah, this is the people's main event. You nailed it. All right. So we have got 388 live viewers. We're so close to that 400 live viewing mark. Thank you all for joining us. We're about to get into the main event of UFC 256. I'm joined by Matt Holt, president of US Integrity, this evening, and this is odds.com, folks. Make sure you smash that like button for me. That helps out a ton, so please hit that like button for us and share the video out there, get the word out. Once again, I want to remind everybody, the replay for this episode is going to be exclusively on odds.com, so don't be fishing through YouTube. You're not going to find it there. Go to odds.com. There's a nice little handy-dandy UFC tab, and you'll find all the shows that I do for odds right there. We have got Deiveson, the God of War Figueiredo, making UFC history with the fastest turnaround for a title shot as a champion in the company's prestigious history here. Taking on Brandon, the baby assassin Moreno. Deiveson Figueiredo is 20-1. The man is near perfect, as close as it gets. Brandon Moreno is 18-5-1. We saw this kid put on a performance, and I think it's fitting that you're here with me on the show, Matt, because we both had Brandon Royval the last time we saw Moreno out there, and I really want to hear your thoughts on that, because from where I'm sitting, I know Brandon Moreno put a good round one in. I know he had Royval in some trouble. He got him in that twister position. He had the choke that he was working on. But I saw everything I wanted to from Royval. He defended that position. He did the right thing. He stayed safe. He got out of it. And then he was winning in the striking. And even though, now, Joe Rogan, my man, I love you, but he kept saying that Brandon Moreno has a power advantage. I saw Brandon Royval landing the bigger shots and Brandon Moreno diving for takedowns before his arm dislocated, leading to the egregious stoppage with 1 second left on the clock. I still hold to the fact that Royval was going to come out in the second round after they put his arm back in place and win that fight when it started standing again. How did you feel about the way that fight went down?
Yeah, I felt as confident as ever right up until that second to go in the first round when they stopped it, that we were fine. As people that bet Royval, I'm like, I knew Moreno was going to come out a house of fire, and he did fine. His wrestling got going, but when his wrestling and submission game failed him early, I'm with you. I started to see Royval starting to get turning the tide slowly, and then all of a sudden we end up with that takedown, the shoulder dislocates. And to your point, had they have let it go one more second and he gets to go to his corner and they put it back in place, I'm not sure he doesn't win that fight. And I don't know. And then we're seeing Royval versus Figueiredo this week instead, which I think would have been amazing. Everyone talks about the Brandon Moreno story and how, he got cut by the UFC. Look, the UFC didn't cut this guy because they thought he was a junkie or a garbage fighter or not a good prospect. If I remember right, they were thinking about getting rid of the 125-pound division. And
they only kept like 4 guys.
That's right. And so basically he was coming off back-to-back losses, albeit, to good guys, Sergio Pettis and Alexander Pantoja, and they cut him. He fought one fight in LFA, and suddenly UFC realized 125 was here to stay, and they brought him right back. So it wasn't like he was gone for a while, had to earn his way back on the regional scene. I mean, that's not how this thing happened. So, getting into this fight itself, minus 300 does seem like a steep price for me to lay. I kind of want to bet the over in this fight because what we have seen in the past is the one kryptonite that Figueiredo sort of has is wrestling. Jussier Formiga, the only guy to bet him in the UFC, was able to out-wrestle him. We don't know if Alex Perez would have been able to out-wrestle him as well or not because he got caught in that guillotine choke so quickly in the last fight. But I think Moreno might be able to do that. And what I do know, and which makes the betting on this fight really interesting, what we do know about Figueiredo is he has a hard weight cut. He weighed 153 in the octagon for his last fight. This is a guy who cuts down to, he has to make 125 to defend his title. He stepped into the octagon for that last fight a couple of weeks ago at 153. He put on 25 pounds, ridiculous. 28 pounds overnight. To turn around and do that same weight cut again in 2 weeks is really, really hard. And who else did we see make that same mistake? You already talked about it. Tony Ferguson. And he didn't have the juice the second time around. I'm wondering if a guy that has to make that drastic of a weight cut twice in a month, if that's not a big disadvantage for him and advantage Moreno. So I did already bet the over 2.5 rounds once, despite the fact that Figueiredo, amazingly at 125, has won his last 6 fights by stoppage. I mean, it's amazing. 6 straight wins by stoppage at 125. But I do think Moreno's a durable guy. He has shown durability in the past. He got beat up pretty good by Sergio. Of course, he hung in there. I think he's going to be able to hang in there. And then what I wonder is, if this thing gets into round 3, at what point does it become big-time advantage Moreno? So I don't know if I'm going to bet Moreno pre-flop or not. I'm still thinking about it. I don't love how they match up skill versus skills. I think Figueiredo's a lot better. His striking's unbelievable. He's creative in all facets of his striking, and his submission game's pretty slick. But I think if we get into round 3 after that drastic weight cut, Moreno could start turning the tide big time here. So I'm wondering, do I bet Moreno now? I already have the over, so those two are a little bit correlated. And the over 2.5 rounds, saying that a flyweight fight will get halfway is plus money. You get plus money that a flyweight fight will go halfway. I couldn't resist that. But I'm still debating, do I bet Moreno now and hope that he gets through the first couple rounds without getting stopped? Because if he does, I'll lose both bets, under and Moreno, or keep my over bet, see if it goes to round 3, and then assuming, he may be down 0-2 going into round 3, making a big in-play bet on Moreno, because I think the gas tank for Figueiredo is going to suffer after that second massive weight cut.
Okay. I mean, you hit a lot of points there and a lot of really valid ones, in my opinion. I think the scales are going to tell us a very, very scary story come Friday. The post-weigh-in show this week more than ever is going to be extremely important for sports bettors because that fast turnaround. I mean, here's the thing. I've doubted Figueiredo several times in the past year. His last couple of fights, I've tried to line up against him and things like that, and it just never works out. This dude is cut from a different cloth. The fact that he's a full-time fighter now, he's got the money to support his family and have people really back him up and have him in the right place, the nutritionist that he's working with, it just seems like he's sharper and better than ever. So I am not going to doubt Deiveson Figueiredo again in this spot, and I think he matches up really, really well with Brandon Moreno. Moreno is a guy that I absolutely love. And before I believed Deiveson Figueiredo was going to be the longtime reigning champion, I thought that Brandon Moreno was our sleeper for the champion of this weight class. I thought he would make his way to the title and take out whoever had the belt and reign himself for quite some time. I love Brandon Moreno. I love his story. I love his heart. I love everything about this kid. But he's a really terrible matchup for Deiveson Figueiredo. Brandon Moreno averages 3.01 significant strikes per minute over the course of his UFC career, and he absorbs 2.96. So he is giving as good as he is getting. He is willing to stand in the pocket and trade, and that is the one thing that you cannot do with Deiveson Figueiredo. This guy's power at 125 is unreal. Now, then the flip side of that story is that Brandon Moreno has never been knocked out. His chin, his durability is off the charts. So if he can take everything that Figueiredo has to offer, slug it out with him for 3, 4, 5 rounds. I mean, Deiveson Figueiredo, his only loss is by decision. This guy's never been finished either. So Brandon Moreno's got the jiu-jitsu advantage. Probably, maybe. We've seen some sick jiu-jitsu out of Figueiredo as well. I give the scramble ability to Moreno, but Deiveson knows how to use his butterfly hooks. He knows how to wrestle. He knows how to stay safe in those spots and slow the pace down. And he's a submission threat himself. I don't see him giving up some weird fluky submission and then being overpowered unless he's gassed out. And that's really the only way I see Brandon Moreno winning this fight, because it's not like Brandon Moreno is a pace fighter. He's not a guy that's going to out-volume Deiveson Figueiredo over the course of a 5-round fight and wear him down and bank those rounds later because he's just got more output. These guys have the same level of output, and both of them trade 1-to-1 with their opponent. So I think this is going to be a slugfest. And unless Brandon Moreno gets a submission, I think this is going to end like every other Deiveson Figueiredo fight. I think he's going to break him, and eventually he will find that shot that puts Brandon Moreno down, unless the scale is a problem, unless he can't make that turnaround and he has that bad durability and he can't quite get it done. That's the only thing I'm concerned with, is the quick turnaround for Deiveson Figueiredo.
Yeah, I am too. I think I'm going to wait to bet this one until Friday, at least, to watch the weigh-ins. I just don't know how a guy who gains 28 pounds, when you only weigh 125, I mean, 28 at that point is 20% of your body weight in 24 hours leading up to the fight, and then could turn around in a couple weeks and do another 30-pound weight cut for 22% of your body weight. That really scares me, and I'm just wondering if he looks like Skeletor on the scales. Even if he makes it, is the line going to drop so much we're going to wish we got plus 250? Or do we not really know how bad the weight cut is until we see him in there, maybe?
I think that's going to be the case. And what I've done is closed out my parlay with Deiveson Figueiredo. So my 2-leg parlay is Sergey Spivak and Deiveson Figueiredo. It came out to minus 108 when I made it. I put 2.16 units to win 2 on that parlay. And I feel like the nice thing is that's a beautiful hedge spot. If Deiveson Figueiredo looks awful on the scales, if it's painfully obvious that Brandon Moreno is going to have the gas tank and be the one that's going to take this thing, we got a nice spot to essentially free roll, because he's a 2-to-1 dog. And even if money just floods in on him and he drops down to plus 180 or plus 150, you can still hedge out of that extremely easily. So that's the way I'm handling it. I'm anchoring everything on Deiveson Figueiredo, and the number on the underdog is going to make it very, very easy to lock up a nice middle area there where you're going to pocket some money no matter what.
There you go. There's nothing wrong with that.
I think that's a good way to handle it. If you've got any parlays, if you've got any long shots that you're doing, just throw Deiveson Figueiredo in there. I don't normally tell people to do that, because the more legs you add to a parlay, the less likely it is of cashing. But if you've got a 3-leg parlay that you really like, you might as well throw Deiveson Figueiredo on there, and then you can make an educated decision on betting an underdog that's giving you plus 200 or better to hedge out and lock up some free money. It's a beautiful position to do that, and we're going to have such a good idea of who's going to win this fight come Friday when we see them on the scales.
And I think this is one of those weeks, and there's certain weeks where you have to listen to what's happening. Mm-hmm. This is one of them. because this guy's going to be doing some interviews, and look, word gets out between his nutritionist and his trainers and himself. People are going to see him around the hotels, and you're going to hear how he looks, how this weight cut has gone, where he came in, where is he right now, how far, how much weight does he have to cut from now until Friday. Those things tend to get out, and more than ever, I would keep an ear kind of to the ground on how that's going for Figueiredo, because he cuts a ton of weight. In terms of percentage of your actual body weight that you have to cut, he might cut more weight than anybody in the UFC. So it's worth at least keeping an eye on. I don't even know how he does it now, but never mind how did he do it in back-to-back twice in a month. I'm really worried about that. I thought it was really unintelligent, and someone should have talked to Tony Ferguson when he did it. Like, why are you cutting weight for nothing? Just to say, hey, look, I did it. And then he had to turn, because he cuts a lot of weight. Tony does. And then he had to turn around and cut it again, and it certainly didn't help him. I'm not saying I don't want to take it away from Gaethje, but it didn't help Ferguson. Boy, I don't know that this quick turnaround is good for Figueiredo here, as much weight as he cuts. Literally over 20% of his body weight he cuts.
Yeah, it's a big question, maybe one of the biggest factors in this fight. And the fact to me, though, that Tony cut that weight to prove a point. He had no idea he was going to accept a fight a couple of weeks later, whereas this is premeditated for Figueiredo. Yeah. So I feel like there's a bit of a difference there, that I think maybe he's confident that he can do it. I think that, him following his nutritionist and keeping his weight down constantly now instead of blowing up and cutting so much, maybe that has something to do with it. So yeah, lots of questions here, and just a hell of a fight. I mean, we talked about the co-main event being the fight of the night. If this fight gets out of round one, this could be a competitor for that fight of the night crown come Saturday.
There's so many fun fights on this card, and meaningful fights in terms of people that could potentially get title shots in 2021 off it. I mean, Kevin Holland, if he wins his fifth fight in 2020 and goes 5-0 in 2020, that's right. First of all, fighter of the year, but second of all, he already has a little bit of a rivalry with Adesanya. They chirp at each other all the time. I could certainly see Kevin Holland popping up into a title fight. If Gane beats JDS, all of a sudden, we could be looking at a legit guy who is 1 or 2 fights away at least from, getting in there with an Overeem or Rosenstruck, or, if Miocic fights Jones, maybe it's Ngannou and Gane in 2021. I mean, these are big time impactful fights to the sport and to what, title fights and matches we'll have in 21. And all kudos and credit to Dana White, who, look, there has been a lot of cancellations. Peter Yan, Aljamain Sterling was going to be amazing. What do you do all of a sudden at the end of the year? The MMA community has rallied behind the UFC. The UFC's done their best job to put out a good product, and I feel like we're ending the year with a bang. They saved this pay-per-view, and I am pumped about it.
I agree. As long as no more fights fall off of it, it still should be No more. We can't have a 6-fight pay-per-view card or something like that. We gotta get a late signing or something like that for this thing to stay filled out for us. But it's a damn good card. Lots of high stakes. It's going to be really exciting. And even with all the cards, all the fights that they moved over to next week's event, even though it's a free fight night, so far they've got 16 fights for next weekend's, free fight to end the year. We're ending strong for 2020. As long as COVID can just back off a little bit, we're going to have a good time as MMA fans.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a fun card next week, too. I'm pretty excited about that. I like Greg Hardy, Tybura. I think that's a sneaky, fun fight. If Greg Hardy wins that, he's going to get a big payday fight. And it's a good main event, too. Wonderboy Thompson, Jeff Neal's a great fight. So that one's going to be great. But I think not only is this one going to be a great card, but I think we're going to make some good money.
I agree. I think there's some
Christmas
really good
bonus, baby.
That's right. That's right. Cash the diehard stimulus checks just in time for Christmas. Matt, I want to thank you very much for coming on the show with me this evening, sir.
Thanks,
the floor is yours. If you've got anything to say, if you want to shout anything out, you go right ahead.
No, look, thanks for having me on. I love breaking down the pay-per-views with you. This has been a blast. And look, if you go back and look at the pay-per-views we've broken down, we've made some good money. So let's keep the run going, my friend.
Let's finish the year strong. Thank you for joining us, sir. I appreciate you. And that'll do it. Thank you, everyone, so much for tuning in to the Diehard MMA podcast this evening. I do have a special little treat for you, as always. I've got that little peek behind the curtain. I've got to film a couple videos here. So, Matt, my friend, thank you for joining me. I'm going to go ahead and sign you off at this point.
Thanks, Clint. Thanks, everybody. Have a good night. Take care.
Have a good one. All right. Thank you all so much for being with me this evening. It's been an absolute blast. I appreciate all the love and support from you guys. And you know what? I do just want to let everyone know this is a really, really hard time for a lot of people out there. The holidays are maybe the toughest time right now, and especially with a lot of us being quarantined, a lot of us being alone, a lot of us having to spend a whole bunch more time within our four walls than we're normally used to. It's going to be really rough. So everyone just bear in mind that we are extremely, extremely blessed to do what we do. We get to watch these fights. We've got our favorite sport. We've got the opportunity to bet on them, hopefully make a little bit of money in a situation where a lot of other people couldn't. And just remember that a lot of people are having a tough time out there. So try to remain calm, try to remain positive, and be that light to those people around you who need it. When you surround yourself with good, positive people like the community that we have right here with the Diehard MMA Podcast and odds.com, what you give is what you get. If we keep ourselves checked and we remain calm and we spread that positivity, that's all we're going to get back. So everybody just do your very best. I know it's hard. I know it's tough. Do our best. It's going to be a good end of the year for us. And then we're going to come back and we're going to kick 2021's ass. Let me tell you, that's what we're looking out for. So you all have an absolutely wonderful week. The 278 of you that are sticking around, if you want to see the little peek behind the curtain, I've got a couple of short video clips that I am going to do here. And the first one, all right, I'm going to save it. I'm going to save the good one for last. So if you want to stick around for a little something, you got to stick with me till the end. So bear with me here while I do my reads. How's it going, everybody? Thank you very much for tuning in here at odds.com. The Diehard MMA podcast is streamed exclusively here on odds.com. And if you want to watch the replay, click the link below. Head on over to odds.com to check it out. Thanks for watching this video. This is odds.com. If you want to watch the full episode, please click the link below. Head on over to odds.com and you can see the whole thing there. What's going on, everybody? This is Clint from the Diehard MMA Podcast, and this is Total Madness for UFC 256. We are going to break down the entire card over-under from the totals perspective. And if you want to see the full Diehard MMA podcast, it is on odds.com, as is Total Madness. Click the link below to check those two out right now. What's up, everybody? This is Clint from the Diehard MMA Podcast, and this is the post-weigh-in recap. The post-weigh-in show is undefeated. Make sure you click the link below, because if you don't, you are missing out on that cash. Head on over to odds.com to check it out. All right, there's all the different little videos I've got to do. You'll see those posted up on YouTube when we post the little teaser links for those who missed the live show for the behind the scenes. And I've got a little something special for everybody. So since this is UFC 256, and it's the big one for the year, rather than waiting until next week's free fight night, I figure there's going to be a couple of extra eyeballs on this one. And Cynthia, I see you in the chat here. You're going to want to cut this one out and have it be its own little video for the people out there. What's going on, everybody? This is Clint from the Diehard MMA Podcast and odds.com. We want to wish you a very happy holidays. And something has been going on in our world this year. It's been really tough. It's been a hard year. People have lost their jobs, and we count ourselves very fortunate to be in a position where we can enjoy the best sport in the world and bet on them and make money. According to financial expert Dave Ramsey, the average Christmas in the United States household costs right around $800. And right now, that's a whole lot of money for a whole lot of people. So what I want to do is do my very best to pay for your family's Christmas and holiday. I keep saying Christmas. I apologize. It is a holiday season for everyone to celebrate no matter what you believe. And what we have for you today is the Holiday Magic Parlay for UFC 256 at plus 3,243. A $25 bet on this parlay will pay out $810.94. So if you've got just $25 in your pocket, you've got an opportunity to pay for your entire family's Christmas thanks to us here at odds.com. The first leg of our parlay is going to be Sergey the Polar Bear Spivak at minus 225. This is a young, hungry fighter who I expect to welcome his opponent into the UFC in a big, big way. I see him getting a finish by submission, and we want to make sure we have our first leg cashing. We got to be live for the rest of our parlay. So we're going to lay the wood on Sergey. Minus 225 is the first leg of our parlay today. The second leg of our parlay is going to be Billy Quarantillo. Billy Q is only minus 120 at the time of filming this parlay, and I expect that line to go up. He should be a much larger favorite here. And now in the middle, we've got to take a couple of chances. We got to take a couple gambly situations to rack up those numbers. But I fully feel that Billy Q is going to be the better, more well-rounded fighter here, and he's going to have the better gas tank that will allow him to win this fight, whether by a late finish or a decision. Next on the card, we're going to do Mackenzie Dern and Virna Jandiroba. Fight goes the distance at plus 130. We see a phenomenon in women's MMA that they go to decision more often than not. And because these women have a history of submitting their opponents, we're getting line value on the over in this position and a plus money on this fight going all the way to the judges' scorecards. I expect Virna Jandiroba to come out and wrestle, and she's the one woman who can stay safe from the grappling attack of Mackenzie Dern. I expect this fight to make it all 3 rounds and get to the judges' scorecards and give us that much-needed little edge here for our parlay. Our next leg is going to be Junior Dos Santos and Ciryl Gane does not go the distance. This is another chalky piece for the parlay, and I think this is a 1-round fight. I fully expect Ciryl Gane to finish this fight early, but Junior Dos Santos has an opportunity to do the same. At minus 250, as long as somebody finishes this fight and it doesn't make it to the judges, we're going to go ahead and check off the next leg of our parlay. We've got Fiziev and Moicano goes the distance as our next leg of the parlay, minus 110. This is going to be an opportunity where both men are serious strikers, but I think they're going to play with each other on the feet, and I expect it to make it to the judges' scorecards as well. The last 2 legs of our parlay, we're going to lay some chalk here. We've got Tony Ferguson at minus 185. I feel like Charles Oliveira is taking too big of a step up in competition, and we've got a championship-level fighter who still has some gas in the tank. So once again, we're going to lay the wood on Tony Ferguson at minus 185. And to close and anchor our parlay, we will bet with the champion, Deiveson Figueiredo, at minus 300. This is a perfect spot that if we get this parlay all the way to the last leg, you've got a big underdog in Brandon Moreno on the flip side that you can hedge out and lock up a profit if you want. But Deiveson Figueiredo is the god of war. He is 20-1. He is near perfect in his MMA career. And I think it's going to take more than what Brandon Moreno has to offer to stop him come Saturday. So once again, that's going to be Sergey Spivak, Billy Q. We've got Dern and Jandiroba goes the distance. Fiziev and Moicano goes the distance. Dos Santos, Ciryl Gane does not go the distance. Tony Ferguson and Deiveson Figueiredo to anchor our Holiday Magic Parlay. A $25 bet wins $810.94. You have a happy holidays. Good luck to all of us, and let's roll. How's that? How's that for a little Christmas magic for everybody there to end this thing? Thank you for the 252 of you who hung with me on that one. I'm locking that parlay up. $25 to win 810. We've got a couple sketchy spots there in the middle, but on this kind of a card, having that kind of a return, shooting for that $800 mark, you got to take a couple of chances. So that'll do it, folks. That will do it. Thank you all very much for spending this evening with me. I appreciate one and all of you every single time we do this show. Without you, the fans, there wouldn't be a Diehard MMA podcast. So thank you all once again. Have a wonderful week, and you'll be seeing my content coming out the rest of the week. As always, we'll look forward to talking to you for Total Madness and the post-weigh-in show. Catch me on Twitter at Diehard MMA Pod. Have a wonderful week.